Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I am the Inconsequential Runner, and joining me is Coach Mark. And this session here, this video is going to be a little bit different. Usually, Coach Mark gives us a great tip, one tip per video, but this one's going to be a bit of a chat. And Coach Mark, I'll throw to you in just a moment to tell us about just some of the coaches that you've had through your life and when you had them and the experiences that you had. And I know there's going to be some stuff we can take from that. So, Coach Mark, when you were an athlete and you had coaches, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, oh, sure. Yeah. So I had three main coaches, all at quite different stages of my life. So it's interesting. They each played a really important role. I had one through secondary school, one through university, and then one sort of in my adult sort of years, which was sort of up till I was 30, really, which is when I sort of stopped running quite so seriously. So my first coach was actually a guy. He was a guy called Frank. He was a real no nonsense Englishman. He was actually a desert rat in World War II, so he was a bit of a kind of a war hero, fighting in the Middle East there.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, and so he sort of brought that attitude a bit to his training. He didn't suffer fools.
Yeah.
He was a phenomenal runner himself. He was in his early 70s. I think at 72 he ran a 3:14 marathon. Give you an idea. So that which
Wow.
at the time was I think it was one of the top in the world. I remember for his age. Yeah, so
314. So
he was an amazing guy, and he it was actually a friend of mine who knew him through the family or something, and he got hold of me. He said, "How about the two of us go and ask him if he'll coach us?" So we went round to his house and asked him. And I always remember this. Do you remember as a kid, if you were at school and you try not to laugh, and
yeah,
it's the most terrible thing?
out of
Well,
nervousness, you're saying, or
what's that?
try not to laugh out of nerves, you're saying?
Out of well, yeah, yeah, and if you do laugh, the consequences are going to be
Oh,
terrible.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah, that sort of things. So he was sitting there, and we were both sitting on the couch there, and he was laying down the law. He's saying, you know, okay, okay, now I'll coach you, okay, but I demand kind of
Right,
discipline from you and no
right,
nonsense or mucking around. I don't want
right.
you to
Yeah, he
waste
doesn't
my
want time
time and all
wasters.
this.
All right.
While he was doing this, my mate Chris, he was trying to make me laugh. And I remember I was digging my thumbnail into my palm to stop me from laughing. And
This
I
was
thought,
so
if
serious,
I
right?
laugh, this whole thing, but the deal's off.
Yeah.
He'll just kind of like that's it. So we managed to get through that, and so he took us off. But he was a wonderful coach, though. He was very very much into technique, so he didn't overtrain us, but it was all very much on honing technique and strength, and also kind of dedication, really. Turning up to his sessions, he wouldn't accept any excuses. I remember ringing him up once. It was pouring with rain, absolutely pelting down. And I rang him up and he goes, "Yeah, what do you want?" And I said, "Oh, I just wondered if training's still on today." And he just said, "Well, why wouldn't it be?" I said, "It's pouring with rain." And there was just this big pause. And then he just went, "And?"
Brilliant.
I went,
Brilliant.
"Hey, I'll see you soon then."
Yep. Yep. That's
Now
not
he was
coach, is
very
it?
old school. He had the old, the old hand stopwatch. He
Yep.
used to put flags around the track. Every 50 meters, he'd get there early and he'd put flags every 50 meters and he'd have a whistle. So he wanted you to run a lap for a specific time and he would blow a whistle every 50 meters. So you'd see if you're on the time or just straight off or off it.
Yeah.
So you learnt pace judgment. Incredible, really. And he also, would you believe, so one of the first things he said, I want you to go down to the old old tyre factory, and out the back they have all these old tyre tubes. I want you to grab one of those, cut the end of it, fill it full of sand, and tie the
Oh, yes,
ends of
yeah,
it.
yeah,
It was an early power bag,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah. I was just gonna say.
Yeah, this was a power bag from back in about 1983, and so we each had one of these. We'd bring it along, big heavy thing, and you'd put it around your shoulders, you see, so you'd hold the
Yep.
ends, and then he'd get us doing marching and squats and skips and that with this bag on top of us. So it was amazing, really. We did that. I mean, every week, and you just got so strong. And then again, I think he was fairly frugal as well. He's from the north of England, so he's quite frugal. So he made a gym. He made weights. He made out of pipe. He got some, lead pipe, old metal biscuit tins, round, the big cylindrical round
Yeah,
biscuit
I
tins.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. He filled them full of concrete, put a hole at each end. So he had like a bath, a pipe and biscuit tin.
Yeah.
And then he made, he cut the ends off plastic drink bottles, filled them full of concrete with a smaller pipe, and you had the dumbbells, So he had us doing all that sort of stuff as well. But he was really good. And I tell you, one of the testaments really to him is, so there was a group of, so me and Chris. Now Chris is still running. You actually know Chris. He's at the club. He's at Olympic Harriers now. So and his daughter is one of the top young runners in New Zealand. So he's still involved with running. Another guy, Matt, who was a young guy, he tapped me on the shoulder at a park run about a year ago. Well, I hadn't seen him since he was about 15. And he said, "Oh, remember me?" And I said, "Boy, I must have looked old if you kind of recognised me. I must have looked old at school." Yeah, so he saw me through my college years, and he really instilled a great discipline, technique, and pace. They're probably the three things there. When I went to university, I hooked up with a coach called Don. Now, he coached a lot of the top junior runners in the country, so I thought it was amazing to go down and, he agreed to coach me. So the thing with Frank, he all technique, but I didn't do a lot of mileage at all, which was good in hindsight. It was great because I was like, my legs were all key. Remember coming down to Don, he said, "Right, I'm going to get you on 100K a week to start with." And I'm like, "What?" Did I hear that right?
What Ks were you doing at the later end of high school under Frank? What sort of weeks were you doing?
Oh, cool. If I ran, I don't know, 30, 40K a week, maybe on a peak week, really not much at all. So, it was great. I was quite a good sprinter. I had no endurance really. Right. So Don put me. He was a Lydiard guy, so he had me doing Lydiard type training. He was amazing. He'd write all the programs out by hand. You'd go round to his house once a month or so, and he would present it to you and talk it through to you. One time I was on holiday, I was staying out with a friend way out in the suburbs somewhere. And they said, they looked out and they said, "Oh, there's a car. Someone in the car's just pulled up." And it was him. He'd driven out all this way to hand me my program. So incredible dedication to his athletes. And my running improved out of sight under him from having that extra mileage, which I've talked about in the past. That endurance is so key. Yeah. Suddenly I was sort of at a different level. He was great. He had great sort of track workouts where we'd all try, and he'd have his hand up, be standing at the finish line with his arm up saying, "It's time to start your next rep." And we'd be going, if we don't look at him, we can pretend we haven't seen him. We don't have to go just yet. And so we say, "He's still got his hand up." Oh, okay. There we go again. He trained me through to he trained me through till I left university. So he was great. He nurtured so many junior runners. Actually, in fact, he trained Nick Willis, our great New Zealand runner,
All right, yes.
all the way through college until he went off to the States. And
Yeah.
again, Nick's talked a lot about how he kept him keen without overtraining him, so he was able to kick on when he hit his adult. And then my third coach was when I went to England. So I basically went to England straight after university, and it was an absolutely wonderful guy called Arthur, who he used to race against Roger Bannister.
Oh, right.
So that's where he mixed with all those guys, and he had just wonderful stories. He'd been to multiple Olympic Games. He was sitting in the grandstand when Emil Zatopek won his 3 Olympic gold medals. So he would tell you all these great stories about this. And he'd always say, "Have I ever told you the story about?" And you say, "Yes, you have." But that was fine. And again, he had a very good sort of we had a great group of runners, and so we had great track workouts where he had this excellent knack of so you'd be doing, I don't know, 1K reps or something. You'd do the first K rep, and then you'd be doing the jog in between, and he would sort of come up beside you. He would jog around with you in the recoveries, and he would check to you, and he'd say, "Okay, how was that one?" And then he might tell you one of his stories to take your mind off the pain, and then he'd say, "Okay, now for the next one, I want you to do this. So you're going to focus on the next one. I just want you to focus on sort of the middle bit of the rep or something." He'd give everyone in the group, he'd sidle up to them and he'd say, "Okay, you've been hanging at the back in these ones, and this next one, I want you to take the front, and you're gonna lead this one out." So he's always giving you a bit of a goal for the session. So just the wonderful people. They all 3 of them sort of almost like as you do in your schooling, really. You kind of have your secondary school into university into work, and again, probably the main legacy really is that I'm still running and still enjoying it.
With the same levels,
none of them burnt me out or ruined my love of the sport.
Look, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like whether it's good fortune or whatever it is, you came across the right coaches at the right time that all imparted something and grew on the previous coach. That was really lovely. That was really nice. Thanks for sharing that, Mark.
No worries